Welcome to the Wander Mode podcast, where we celebrate the fearless spirit of women embracing life's wanderings. Where every story is a spark of inspiration and reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we simply embrace wherever the journey may lead. Welcome to today's episode, where I am excited to actually share the mic with the incredible Jena Golden. Jena is a powerhouse real estate investor, photographer, and business and life coach through her company, Made for This. Through her coaching, Jena is helping women step boldly into the life that they were made for, guiding them on their journey to entrepreneurship and personal freedom. She's also the host of the Made for This podcast, where she shares real, raw conversations about business and life. Today, Jena and I are coming together to dive into an authentic discussion about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So let's get started.
Hey, Julie, I'm so glad that we get to have this conversation today. I've been waiting for a while now, and oh my goodness, we finally made our time work.
I am so looking forward to this conversation, Jena. As we kind of said before we hopped on, I just love connecting with other women who are in the entrepreneurship space because I think it can help us really build community. And I really hope that those that are listening today can really have some takeaways from the power of community and the power of women supporting women within our different businesses. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this unfolds.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. And, we're just testing the waters here, but I think that this conversation is going to be a beautiful one. I think both of our audiences are going to love it. So let's just dive in. Miss Julie Thomas, tell me a little bit about you and how you got into this short-term rental space and your story, your journey.
Yeah, I was actually a teacher for 16 years, and I have wanted to be a teacher since I was in 5th grade. I never saw myself doing anything different. I taught middle school, so 12 and 13-year-olds, and probably one of the harder ages to teach, even though to me it was a real joy. But 10 years ago, my husband and I really wanted some additional income to travel. It's really been our passion for a long time. And W-2 jobs just were not cutting it. It just wasn't bringing in disposable income that we could have used to afford travel. And we had been going out to West Yellowstone, Montana for several years, like snowmobiling and spending time with friends. And we had a few really bad rental experiences, as I'm sure most people have at this point, staying at Airbnbs or VRBOs.
Oh, yes. I've had my fair share.
Right? Yeah, we all have those stories. And in our case, it was like frozen pipes in a bathroom because there was a hole in the wall and it just was bananas. And we were thinking, how are people honestly renting these homes in this condition and making money? And it felt like a true disservice to those that are actually staying in these properties and using their hard-earned income and very little vacation time to then have that sort of experience. And we just thought, I think we can do this better. And we had no money at the time to really invest in a property, but we scraped money together. We figured out how to get approved for a loan. We purchased our first property out in West Yellowstone and just started DIYing our way to making it happen. And as the first bookings started coming in and we were getting good reviews and positive feedback about how connected we were and how we were providing this property that had great amenities and it was well taken care of, it really gave us the confidence of like, I think we know how to do this. And we are genuinely providing something that isn't currently out there. Again, in 2015, it was a very different world in vacation rentals than it is now. So that's kind of where we started. And then every 2 years, we kept using the profit from the prior house to invest in the next, and the next, and the next.
Okay.
And we built up to 6 properties and we managed them ourselves, even from a distance. We live in Minnesota. And we had properties in Arizona, Montana, in northern Minnesota, which are about 4.5 hours away from our house. And we figured out how to manage from a distance, even though we didn't live nearby. And really, it became super addicting. And here we are today, now coaching people how to do the same thing. And I think where we uniquely position ourselves is how to do Airbnbs yourself. There are a lot of property management companies out there right now that people turn their properties over to, and that's not really our shtick. Our shtick is you do it yourself to get the profit, right?
Yeah.
And you roll up your sleeves and you do the hard work. It all started with this dream of traveling more, and we need to get additional income. So it was like, where is that passive income
Right.
source going to come from?
Really no such thing as passive, but
No.
a lot easier. I think, well, I don't know. Is it easier having a business? Some days yes, some days no, right? But the
Yes.
freedom that it gives you to,
Mhm.
like what you said, to travel and do the things that you wanted to do, what was important to your family. I'm excited to learn from you. I've had an Airbnb in the past, but it was just one, right? And it was local. It was not difficult to manage myself, but from a distance, I'm like, ooh, I don't know, like how?
Well, and with you being in real estate and flipping, which I would love for you to talk about too before our conversation unfolds too much, is that any of these passive income sources actually do come with a lot of work.
Rolling up your sleeves
yes.
and do it. You have to learn it before you can really get good at it and put systems behind it. Like that first one, I know you probably learned way more on that first one than you anticipated, right? And that you just got better and better and better over the years.
Yes. And I would say it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. And so looking back, I'm a little mortified on some of the decisions that we made because you're just like, really? Like you thought that was a good idea? Or, ooh, that was a big waste of money. Or like you could have gone a different direction, but you don't know what you don't know. You're really just trying anything in the moment to make whatever this dream is that you have doable.
You just create it as you go. That's how I started with my coaching business. I created a $27 little program, and looking back on it, it was horrible. It was terrible. I was like, it was good content, but I had put it together not to today's standards, right? Like when you look back, like you said, you're a little mortified at what you created, but people loved me and they trusted me and they got so much from it. And that turned into something a whole lot bigger. Right. But it started with a dream and needing income to get to where I wanted to be in life.
And what year was that for you?
That was in 2020. And 2020 hit me. I'll share a little bit of my story. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and not in the way that most people would think. Of course, I went through the same things that everybody else went through then. But at the very beginning of 2020 is when I was going through a divorce, moved out of my home into an apartment, pretty much lost everything. And then the world shut down. And so I was a single mom and I needed income. I was not essential. So I took the skills that I had acquired over the years, and in my photography business, I had built a really successful photography business over the years. I'm like, I can teach people how to do this. And so that's where it started, from my little dining room table in that apartment. And I was like, I'm going to put something together. And so I did. I had to create income. And so that eventually turned into a coaching business. I had time then. I was one-on-one coaching, and then it turned into another program. And during that time, I was working on myself coming out of that divorce, right? And so I went all in on personal development. I hired a life coach. Eventually I got certified as a life coach because I loved it, and I had seen what it had done for me just in that little time period. And then in that 3-ish years, that little $27 program that I, created, it turned into a $500,000 coaching program. And I was like, wow, okay, I did something here. Now I can really go and do something, right? And that was with coaching photographers. And last year I got married to the man of my dreams. Woo! And I figured out along the way, though, this is where real estate comes in. I had my photography, not a lot of overhead there, had my coaching, no overhead, essentially, except for, your programs and tech and marketing, advertising. I paid a lot in taxes. And I was like, whoa, this is not fun, right? So that got me interested in real estate because I knew there were tax benefits that came with it. I just didn't know what they were exactly. So a little over a year ago, Brian walked away from his 9 to 5. I had saved up a nice little nest egg and we had some breathing room. So he walked away from his 9 to 5. We started concentrating on flipping houses because he grew up in construction and had a background in finance. So I'm like, okay, power couple, here we go. Right. So it was like the perfect combination. And we started building our real estate portfolio. We've flipped multiple houses. I think we're on 6 houses. We have 2 under contract right now to get started again. And we have 3 long-term rentals. So I've had, like I said, I had Airbnb in the past and I'm itching for another one. So this conversation couldn't come at a better time for me selfishly.
And I think it's the interesting thing about real estate really is like, as an investment, there's so many options that you can do with it. What you're doing, you can flip them if you have the information that you need to be able to do that, or the skill set to do that. You can long-term rent, you can short-term rent, rental arbitrage. There's so many different options of what you can do with real estate. It really is a fascinating space to be in.
And the cool thing is too, you really don't even have to have the skills. Yeah. We have friends who are investors who wouldn't know what side of a hammer to use, right? Like they would have no idea. Well, they figure it out. They either invest with someone like us who actually flips, or they hire crews and they just manage the projects, right? So there's so many, like you said, so many different ways. It all is just what floats your boat, right? What fits what you need or want at the time. So you quit your W-2. What did that take? What kind of things did you have to believe and trust about yourself to make that bold move?
Yeah. So actually, my husband, Ben, had left a year prior, and my income was our steady Eddie income, and insurance.
Yes.
For the year prior to me leaving it. And I would say it takes this belief that you're going to do whatever it takes to make it work.
Yes.
And it was sort of that same attitude that we had back in 2015 when it was like, we know that this is what we want. And so we're going to do what it takes to make this happen. In 2015, that looked like taking out an interest-free credit card to be able to buy furniture for the Airbnb, right? Yes. We didn't have any other source of where that
Can I get the 12 month? Can I get the 18 month?
Yeah. What are the terms that you're willing to give us here? Now we have a daughter, we have a house. There are 2 of us that are trying to leave our W-2 incomes. And I'm not going to lie, it was terrifying for me. I think in some ways my husband financially had a lot more confidence in it than I did. I am the frugal one. I'm the one thrifting and figuring out ways to save dollars. And he's very much like, it's going to be fine, But it took a lot of belief that no matter what, if we wanted this bad enough, we were going to figure out a way to make it happen. And sometimes that's cutting costs where you can cut costs. And sometimes that's getting creative and how can the business look a little different to be able to bring in sources of income. So for us, that's where the coaching came into play.
Yes.
Back in 2020, we had actually thought about getting into the coaching space. And then I got pregnant with our daughter, and then COVID happened. And I was teaching online at the time, and my mental capacity with an infant and teaching, I just didn't have it in me to then try to figure out the coaching thing in addition. And so we tabled that, and we ended up coming back around to it now that we've both left our W-2 incomes. And that really became this way of, okay, the Airbnb business, these homes are providing our lifestyle, our living, they're paying the bills, they allowed us to leave our jobs. But if we want to continue to expand, then what is the other component that we want to add in here? How are we going to make this truly work to continue to be sustainable? And that's where the coaching came in. And it's interesting how you can kind of come full circle on an idea. It was sort of 4 years in the waiting, and it kind of just sat on the side as this idea. Yes. And all of a sudden now it made sense because we have the time and ability. Our daughter's a little older. She's in daycare, right? And so things kind of started coming together. But again, whatever it is that you're leaving behind, you have to have that innate belief that if you want it bad enough, you're just going to do what you need to do. And
totally with
you. That sounds so simple, but it really is just, you're going to figure it out. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, it does sound simple, but it's not easy to do, right? Like it takes courage to be able to take those action steps and like actually physically do it. A lot of people just think and dream and I'm one of these days, it's the ones who make the moves. Those are the ones who are changing the world and changing their families.
Yep. Well, and like you sitting there as a single mom and having literally, I'm sure your whole entire life just absolutely shaken any sort of future plans, right? Like, you're like, what am I doing? Yeah. But you're in this moment where it is a little bit of fight or flight. Yes. And you have to choose. I'm either going to fight to get what I want, or I'm going to flee. But where is that going to get me? Right? Like hiding from my reality is going to get me nowhere versus, okay, I'm going to do what it takes. I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up riding horses, and some of the people listening on my side anyway, will remember this story. But my dad taught me, look, if you fall off, it's okay if you need to cry for a second, but you get back up, you dust yourself off, and you get back on that horse and you show it who's boss, right? And so that's what I did. I had to. I didn't have another choice. It was either stay there, stay broken and pitiful and not go anywhere with my life. But I had kids counting on me, right? And I needed to be able to do it for myself too. So I think going through all that and coming out on the other side of it a whole lot stronger. And same thing, quitting jobs and having to go through that lack of income and just figuring it out along the way, cutting corners, slimming down. Okay, honey, what are we going to do? That sort of thing. You come out stronger on the other side of it. So that's kind of what motivated me to start empowering women. Like so many women don't understand money, and I was one of them. I didn't know anything about money. I didn't know anything about investing. I was completely in the dark. I was the little wife whose husband was taking care of me. And that's not me saying anything bad. That's just the role I played, right? And it wasn't until I found myself single that I had to buckle down and I had to learn those things. I had to learn how to get insurance. I'd never gotten my own insurance myself, never done anything like that. And so now I feel like it's my responsibility to help women to become financially independent, to become financially secure, because anything can happen in life, not just my story, but illness. It could be a divorce. It could be a lawsuit, change in employment. I mean, like anything, we aren't promised tomorrow. And I just don't want to see another woman go through that. Like you said, our futures don't always turn out the way that we thought that they would. And we as women, we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and support our families on our own if we have to. If we have to. Hopefully we don't, right? But if we have to. So I've been blessed to have coached hundreds of women now, mostly in the photography space, but they've turned their little side hustles and little hobbies from making a few $1,000s a year to 6 figures or multiple 6 figures. And that's the power of coaching. I'm so excited. Like you said at the beginning, it's so cool to talk to somebody who's doing the same thing. Like you're in a different space, but you're impacting people's lives just the same, right? I just want to help as many people as I can. And I know that you want to do the same thing.
It's the piece that I always loved about teaching. And in some ways, it's not lost on me that becoming a coach is basically just becoming a teacher of adults. There's nothing more rewarding than connecting with someone through learning. And I think just in being a teacher, I'm a big advocate of being a lifelong learner and being open to the fact that you can learn anything you want to learn. Now, some of us may learn things slower. Like I would be on the slower end of learning power tools and how to flip a house. But you put me into a coaching space where it's like, okay, now you need to design a curriculum, slides, etc. Like I'm your girl. Like I got that, because I did it for so long in teaching but we can all learn those things. We can all learn the new skills that we need to learn in order to move ourselves forward in whatever space we want to move in. And coaching is so powerful. The way that you can connect with people on their learning journeys, and then you're still learning at the same time. Like it's interesting talking to you because you've built this coaching business to being so successful. And it's inspiring me to hear you say that because we're still very early on in the stages of like I don't know what you want to call it. Like, I'm very much in the hustle. Like,
I remember that. We'll go through seasons. You'll go through like crazy momentum seasons, and then you can't sprint forever, right? You go hard and then you rest, but you can't stop. You're still building momentum just slowly, but then, man, those sprint periods, they can pay off big time.
And
we'll
really
talk
help
more about that after. For sure.
Yes, really help you build this lifestyle that you want. And I think it's the appealing thing to people about entrepreneurship, really, is the control over the life that you're able to lead when you're in that space.
100%. Yeah. I haven't found an entrepreneur yet who isn't a control freak, who wants it done the way that they want it, right? Who we say we want freedom, and we do want freedom, but really we're just big control freaks. I don't want anybody to give me my hours. I want to set my own hours.
Yep. Controlled freedom.
Yes, controlled freedom. I love it. I love it. Surely you've had to go through periods of growth with building this business. Like, where do you think that you've grown the most personally, mentally, physically? I mean, we have to take care of our own bodies too, right? But where do you think that maybe you've seen the most growth?
I would say, honestly, the biggest area I've seen growth is how I view my identity, if that makes sense. And I'm sure you felt this too, shifting a bit from like being a photographer to being a coach. But there's this strange thing that happens when you identify as like, I'm a teacher, I am a photographer, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, whatever it is that those labels are that we put on ourselves, right? And sometimes I think when you have these big shifts in identity, it can really rock you to your core, because when you take away one of those components, or like that component changes, it's very unsettling. You don't really know what to do with it for a while. And for me, my identity really started shifting when I became a mom. So it shook me as a woman, because now I'm not a woman on my own, only responsible for myself.
Yes.
I'm now responsible for this little human being. But having her also shifted the way that I perceived teaching and what I was able to do with that career, which then shifted me into thinking maybe I need to do something else full time so that I can also dedicate more time to the mom part of me. And so it's like all these components started shifting, whereas like prior, my identity was simple, right? Like, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher. Like,
yes.
It was like the
easy. Yeah.
Yes. Tie the little bow on top of the package. It's like, this is who I am.
Yep.
and then becoming a mom, and all of a sudden, I think having this priority shift, it changed my why for a lot of the things about who I wanted to be, why I wanted to be that, how I wanted to spend my time, how I prioritized other relationships in my life, etc. And so I would say my biggest growth, especially over the last year, has been really trying to get in touch with who I am and who I want to be and how I want to project that person. And so it's put me on all these other little tiny paths, like trying to get back to being stronger, like I was prior to my pregnancy. So I'm doing like a lot of weightlifting and things like that right now, joining a book club and trying to do some things for myself, building this new schedule for myself so that I can show up for my daughter at her daycare things, etc. We joked before too that we also were in our 40s, and that also changes things too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. And I think you and I are the same in a lot of this, even though I've gone through some different things than you have. But you're right. Like, I went from photographer to coach. And then I felt this nudge on my heart. I was like, oh, goodness, where are we going? Right. And then I went to investor, and then more nudges. I'm like, I can help more than just photographers, even though I love them. I love you guys that are listening. But I knew I could do something else. But man, I went through, I would say the last 6 months have been the absolute hardest identity shift, because I'm leaving this career behind, this industry, I should say, that I've known for almost 20 years. That was me. I was the girl with the camera who then turned into the girl with the camera who made a lot of money with the camera, and then taught other people how to make a lot of money with their cameras. And I've just tossed and turned over this so much. And it's just been a massive identity shift. But one of the things that I do every morning, if I'm in my head, I will definitely coach myself out of it. Like, okay, Jena, come on. And I, have my own little thing that I do. But before I walk downstairs, because I'm an early morning person, I didn't used to be. I trained myself to be a morning
Oh,
person.
interesting.
That's a whole nother topic. So I'll get up super early before the sun comes up, and I get in like an hour, 2 hours of work just on my own, right? Uninterrupted, which is really like 6 hours of normal work, right?
So true.
But before I walk downstairs, I decide, okay, who am I going to be today? I have a decision to make right now. Who am I going to show up as? I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be confident. I'm an amazing coach. I'm a leader of women. Instead of going, today sucks and I'm just tired and I'm going to, all this stuff. I coach myself. I talk myself. I pump myself up, right? Like this is who I'm going to be. And when we decide who we're going to be intentionally, like the how we're going to get it done, it just starts to happen naturally when we focus more on who we're being instead of how we're going to make money today. How are we going to do our job today? Well, it comes with who I'm being first. And so it's so cool that you brought that part up. I love it.
At least for me, the identity part, it came with a lot of highs and lows, sometimes by the day, sometimes by the week. Would you say that you're riding like the high or in the low?
Oh my gosh. Right now, like I finally, in the last like 3 or 4 weeks, I'm on my high.
Okay.
I'm coming into it, right? Because behind the scenes, I've been doing all the hard work. Like I'm building a new coaching program. And so, I mean, that stuff is tough to do, all the tech behind the scenes. And I wasn't very visible. And so now having worked on it so much and getting my messaging down and getting some clarity behind it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is who I am, And so right now I feel like I'm on a high. Can I get swept off my feet? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get knocked down, right? I think it's how fast we start bouncing back. To me, the more secure you are in who you are, you'll start bouncing back faster when you do get knocked down by whatever, right? Any sort of circumstance.
Right. And the power in what you said, which is basically coming back to what I'm going to do or how my business is going to unfold is going to happen as long as I'm focused on who I want to be and how it is that I want others to see me being, I guess. And I love that you align that basically to your values, that if it always comes back to what you value, all the rest is going to follow. And I think to your point, that helps you bounce quicker because you're not staying at the bottom with all of this junk of like, I don't even know how to pull myself back up. It's like, if I always just pull myself back to my values, then there's always an exit out of the low, so to speak.
Out of the pity party.
Yes.
Yes. Which I've been a pro at, what woman hasn't, especially as we hit our 40s.
Me too. I remember I was working with a business coach back in October, and I remember just saying to her, like, if I could just get to like 100 followers, if I could just whatever. And it was one of those moments of just throwing myself a pity party of like, how do I get in front of people? How do people know that I'm out there? It felt so hard in that moment to get myself in front of people. And I remember her saying, it doesn't matter if it's 100, if it's 1,000, if it's 100,000. She said, because at the end of the day, you're going to get to 100. You're going to get to 1,000. You're going to whatever, but it's all of the things that are happening behind the scenes and not in the numbers that you're throwing yourself a pity party over.
Yes.
It is actually really going to be what builds your business. And in that moment, I didn't understand that. And then as you slowly start to see yourself grow and you go through the highs and the lows, you start to recognize really what it is that does matter when you're building the business. And it really does come back to connections and your values. Yeah.
100%. I had that one of those same conversations with Brian because as I pivoted, my other Instagram account was fully photography, right? And I knew that was not going to translate well. So I had to start over. And man, it's no joke. Starting a new social media platform, whatever platform it is, man, you're right. It is hard. And I have had my own pity parties. It was so easier back in the day. And, but I remember standing in the kitchen going, how in the world am I going to reach people if only 24 people see my reel? Why is it so hard? Why am I going through this? And he looked at me and he was like, do you know why you're going through that? It's because you need to know what it feels like so that you can coach somebody, because the people coming up behind you, they're going to go through the exact same thing. And it really isn't, to your point, it's not the number that we see. We get so caught up in that because so many people see what we do that we don't know about, and the right ones are going to align with us, to our core message, our core values, and they're going to fall in love with us and trust us and hire us. Yeah. And they're out there. We just don't see it.
Because we're looking at the wrong things sometimes.
Oh, yeah. That's easy to do. That's what we've been trained to do, you know? And yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that. So outside of the social media challenges, right, that we both go through, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered with building an Airbnb business?
I think the biggest thing, and this is, I guess, more from the coaching space aspect, but I would say it's having to combat messages that are very against how we would love to see things be. Okay. So, for example, we really believe in having a very guest first mindset. You know, I think that there are a lot of individuals out there that it's like, I'm just going to go buy this house. I'm going to go rent it. And it is what it is. They have to kind of deal with whatever it is that they choose to rent. And I think that sometimes that can really put a negative light on what it is to have a short-term rental. That can make hosts appear as though they're just overly greedy. They don't actually care about people who are coming and staying. And so I think sometimes combating some of the information, or I guess the attitude that exists out there. I think the other thing in this space right now too is there are a lot of cities that are being inundated with short-term rentals that are driving up housing prices. It's making it rather difficult in bigger cities for people to be able to comfortably live and afford homes or long-term rental situations. We were just reading an article this morning out of Spain. It's overcrowded, too much tourism, and there are people that are mass protesting short-term rentals in those spaces because they can't work there. They can't live there. They can't exist there comfortably with all of this tourism and some of the things that has caused. And so I think, unfortunately, especially when you look at things like rental arbitrage, where you're taking over long-term leases to short-term rent, it's creating a lot of difficulty in that space for everybody. And unfortunately, I think some of those policies start to cross over into other spaces where we aren't impacting long-term rent situations. And so I would say that's kind of the most difficult thing that we're having to kind of combat right now is how do you exist in this space as a coach and want to teach people based on what you value, and you don't want to be negative and you don't want to call out your competitors, so to speak, in the space that you disagree with, but you're also trying to state that you have an opinion and a value that definitely doesn't align with what a lot of other people are doing, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's the same thing in any industry, right? Yeah. But you have to be able to have your opinion and stand in your core values. Otherwise, you're just diluting your message and you're going to attract either everyone or no one, right? And so I think that it's okay to say this is where we stand on this topic without being, like you said, negative toward an opposing way of doing business. I love the way you do business. You're about the customer experience, making sure that they have a great time. If you think about your client, they are putting aside a week's worth of their income or more to come and stay at your business, right? Give you the money and that they have worked so hard for. And they've built up and they've got the kids excited and they just want to have a great time together. And if they're over here worried because the air conditioner's not working or the heat's not working or they can't find a spatula or a pizza pan. Like, I have stories on stories from Airbnbs. I'm like, really? I have to go to Walmart to buy a pizza pan because you don't have a pizza pan. So I love that. You have to have at least one funny tenant story. Or what do you call them? Renter? What do you call guest?
Yeah, it's like a guest. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to give us one of those.
Oh, yeah. So we actually just had a real challenging guest over 4th of July. Just nothing was right. From the beginning. There was this issue with the floor. My feet are slightly dusty. there is a burned out light bulb, but in fact, it was a light that wasn't plugged in. And you're getting inundated with messages. Part of what made this particular situation so hard, and I don't want to like take it to a darker side of the conversation at all, but like our property manager out there passed away in late June. And he was kind of like our on-site person, like the person who would show up and do maintenance and this, that, and the other thing. And we're in very much a transition period right now where this is a property out in Montana. We do not live there. Yeah. So trying to help this individual out when they have this super high list of things that appear wrong, when in fact we were able to work through almost all of it. That can be a real challenge. That's very stressful, especially for the kind of personality I have, which is a people-pleasing personality.
Pleaser. Yeah.
Yes. And that perfectionist that you were talking about and like that need to control, it's very hard to have to like remove myself from the emotion and say to myself, okay, so this list of things that are wrong are not actually logical, right? And so like I had to step back and just say, for reasons outside of my control, this guest is not super thrilled with how things played out. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard for me because I want all of our guests to feel like they have spent money in a situation that they're now like glad to be in. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, that was just not going to happen with this person. And so
she had decided beforehand.
Yes.
She decided who she was before she came to your property.
Correct. Exactly. And those moments, and I'm sure too, you probably see this in your coaching space as well, is that when you don't align with whomever it is that is paying for the service that is connected to you, that can be a really hard thing to navigate. I'm sure you have stories where it was like you ended up in situations with clients that maybe weren't the best aligned, or like you had to go different directions, or maybe there were refunds or things like that. That's really hard as a perfectionist to accept that someone doesn't accept what you're putting out there, I guess.
Right. Because we have high standards and we think, how can you not love what we created for you? Right. And it's hard to not take some of that stuff personally, but as a business owner, you really do have to take the emotion out of it and remind yourself that you can't control the way somebody reacts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that in photography. I've had it in coaching. I've had it when somebody puts an offer on one of our flips and they nitpick it to death. I'm like, come on, please. But people are people and they're just going to do what they do. Right. And the important thing is how we react.
What has been your biggest doozy of a situation?
Oh, wow. Okay. It's funny that you said it was your latest one because I think our latest one's probably the most challenging. There's a couple things you really have to consider when you're going into a flip. One, it's a huge decision. First and foremost, it's a huge investment, just like in an Airbnb. You have to control some things, okay? Your time, your money. And I think one of the biggest things, and this is my way of circling back to this, is making some really quick, powerful decisions and not getting in your head and let your emotions drive your decisions. But with flipping houses, I mean, you have to know your numbers inside and out, just like Airbnb, right? You make your money on the buy. You have to buy it right. And you have to know, what am I going to be able to sell this thing for in that neighborhood a couple months from now? And how much is it going to cost to rehab and like all the things? You have to be able to estimate the price and the rehab, but you also have to manage your timeline. And that one I think is trickier than the money for me anyway, because it affects your profit. You have lenders out there. Most people would have lenders. Most people don't use their own money. You either have a private money lender or a hard money lender or a combination of both. And so when you start taking those draws, that's when the interest starts piling up and the clock really starts ticking. And so those monthly payments can add up. And if you let your timeline drag on, if you let delays happen, man, a nice way to say, you're in a mess, right? So our most challenging flip, probably the last one, we had two going on at the same time. We bought two houses within about a week of each other, and we were on the same timeline. We're scaling, right? So we went from one at a time. Now we're at two at a time, but we only had one crew. So we had to hire a new general contractor, and it was a woman, which I was so excited about. I was like, man, a woman GC, and she's got a team, and this is going to be awesome. And she said all the right things, and they handled demo like a champ. I could tear some stuff up like the best of them. But when it came to putting the house back together, we found out real quick that she really did not know what she was doing. Unfortunately, it was a lot of, oh, we're going to come back to do that, and we're going to fix that. Things were out of order. And when you're rehabbing house, things have to be in the right order. You can't paint and then sand the walls. You have to sand and then paint the walls. So a lot of that going on. So that's where a quick, powerful decision, it can save you. So Brian and I went to check on the project and we saw the mess that it was in. Like, oh no, we walked outside, had a 30-second conversation. I don't even know that we said that much. We just looked at each other. We were like, nope, this is not gonna work. And so we immediately walked back in and said, hey, I think it's best if we just go ahead and part ways. This isn't working. And that certainly was not an easy conversation to have with her because she was a very strong, powerful woman, right? She's very confident in herself, which I love, right? Mm-hmm. But we were instantly attacked and accused of firing her because we didn't have the funds or the money to finish the project, not because of the quality of her work. We were attacked. And so that's hard to hear. But, we could have made it work. We could have dealt with it. We could have compromised, but we keep circling back to standards and core values. Like she obviously didn't align with ours. And so we ripped the Band-Aid off. We took the loss on that, washed it up to a lesson learned, and it set us back about a week, but we got back on schedule and we got it on market about a week later than we had hoped. But yeah, that was definitely challenging. And what we found out about a month later was that this is not the first time that she had done this. She does this and then changes her LLC and then does it again and changes her so nobody knows. But the flipping world is a small world, really, in local areas. And so you figure it out real fast. So anyway, it's just something that you go through and you learn. That was probably one of the most challenging things that we've been through. But I'm glad that we went through it early on because it makes us better at vetting our people. And I think it will definitely be a good thing going forward, having gone through that.
Well, and it comes back to what we talked about toward the beginning too, right? Is you have to do whatever it takes.
Yes.
And as you said, that is impactful to profit and your ability to scale, and also the other people that rely on you to continue to scale, right? And the people that are now working along investors or whoever it is, and those individuals are that are connected with you. Yes. You have to. I mean, can you give people a certain amount of grace and say, okay, sure, like I understand that this happened or this came up or that came up. But at the end of the day, it is a business and those decisions can be hard to make, but they're essential to make for the growth of your business that impacts yourself and the other individuals that are connected with you. And so again, you have to do what it takes. I don't love the word ruthless, but you have to be willing to go there if you have to.
You have to be willing to do the hard things. Yep. Yes. Yep, you do. And I think that stripping the emotion out and doing right, like you said, doing right by our investors, by us, by our family, the other people that are going to come on to work, we had to stop the bleeding right then and there, right? And I think it was a good call and you handled yours. I don't know how that turned out, but hopefully really well in the end.
Yeah. She appreciated the communication. We were very communicative. I think we never really got to a full resolution. And sometimes you don't, just like in your situation, right? It's not always perfectly buttoned up. It's not always the greatest into whatever the situation is. But I think how you handle those situations and present whatever the options are, you get to the best possible place you get to, and then you have to move on to the next, just like you, because you've gone from scaling with one property to now you're doing two properties. I mean, you always have to kind of have your eye on the next thing. It's like, I'm going to deal with this because I need to in the moment, but then it's time to look forward again to the next guest or to the next property. Where do you see yourself going with scaling? Do you have this idea that eventually we could be standing up 3 at the same time? Or do you have a capacity at which okay, this is as much as we want to take on so that it doesn't also swing other things out of balance? Or where are you at with that?
Yeah, I don't know that you ever truly know, right? It's kind of like you don't know how you get there until you got there. What are the perfect steps to
Yeah.
success? Well, I don't know. I can look backwards and tell you what I've done so far, but I don't know what it looks like going forward.
Yeah.
But as far as the real estate side, we really want to do 10 at least this year. So we're on 5. We've got 2 more locked up. We'll see how that goes. I think that we can do it. So we have gone from doing the work ourselves on the very first one to hiring teams of contractors. So Brian sold all of his tools, all the big tools. I still make him have a hammer and a drill, those sort of things for around the house. but we don't do any of the physical work ourselves. So we went to hiring a team, and now we've brought my brother on to manage one project while Brian manages another project. So that's how we've been able to do that. And I do believe once we get our systems firmly in place, and that's what we're working on right now, that we'll be able to do multiples at a time. You have to figure out the money side of it too. At the very beginning of this whole real estate world, it was, oh my gosh, we can't find investors. Where are these magical investors? Everybody says they're out there, but we couldn't find anybody. Just kind of putting it out there into the universe or praying about it, that sort of thing. They started showing up. And I think just telling our story and showing what we were doing, it just started showing up. We need contractors. They started showing up. We need private money lenders. They started showing up. And so it's just been such a cool thing to watch that happen. I would love to take it to 10 this year. Next year, I would love to take it to 20 if we can. We have 3 long-term rentals. We really want to do small multifamily, maybe some small apartment complexes, like up to like 20 doors, something like that as far as long-term goes. But I want to be doing the Airbnb again. I love that client experience. My photography business was to the core. It was all about the experience, a high touch, high experience. So I love that. So I would love to have a couple of Airbnbs, but we'll just kind of see how that goes. On the coaching side, wow, that's a beast in and of itself. I just pivoted. So from photographers to just women in business or women who want to create a business, an online business or a coaching business. So I started over basically. So that small course, if you want to talk about scaling, I'm just putting my pieces together, right? So I have a small course on how to create your first digital product. I have a 6-week mastermind on women who want to start their own coaching business or launch a new product. And I do some private one-on-one coaching. So I have like all the pieces in place, the basics covered for anybody who wants to come into my world, like at different price points. But my big dream is finally coming together. I've been having this in my head for years now, and it's finally coming to be, but a different kind of coaching membership it's called Made for This. So super excited. And it's tattooed on my arm, which has another story in and of itself. But I quietly opened the doors to people on a wait list for founding members. So I'm getting it off the ground, and it's part course, part coaching from me, and part community. And it'll be a combination of life coaching and business coaching. So it's for women who know that they're meant for something bigger, probably in that place where you were before you quit your teaching job. Something may just be getting in your way, which is a lot of us, right? We let this head trash get in our way sometimes, that I can't do it, or how could it ever be me, that sort of thing. So it's based on a mixture of the things that have brought me personally success: growth mindset, learning how to coach myself, being supported by women who get your vision or who will cheer you on through it, and some intense periods of focus. So taking that bold, courageous, consistent action. I'm pretty stoked about that. So that's kind of where I see myself going. I want to build that program out, and then maybe I'll start specializing into some other things for women who want to build their online businesses, launching and email funnels and all the automations and those things that really go into putting the gas on the fire. So what about you? What do you guys want to do?
I think sort of like you, that number 10, I don't know why, having 10 properties, I think that's probably where we would cap ourselves from a management perspective.
Yeah.
Just because we do DIY management. And so we're not fully turning it over to somebody who's handling all of the guests and all of the properties and all of the billing and things like that. We know that with our lifestyle and loving to travel, that it's important for us that we want growth, but we want sustainable growth. Similar to you, you can take the little steps forward, but you have to put the things in place that allow you to still have other components of life that still work. And scaling is great, but if you scale too big, too fast, or scale beyond really what's doable for you to do it within the way you need to do it, it becomes impossible. And so we just really believe in hands-on management of our own properties. So we've already predetermined this is the amount of properties we can do it ourselves with. And anything beyond that would have to get turned over to another company. Otherwise, I think the quality control starts going down.
You just run out of capacity.
You do, just like you bringing your brother in, right? So that he can manage one and then Brian's managing one. It's kind of the same thing for us. Like if you do decide to go into more Airbnbs, you'll start to see the similarities between what you were already saying about the flipping to what we're saying. It's exactly the same thing. It's like, we know we can hit this point and then we would have to bring in somebody else.
Right.
And Ben's side of our business is more behind the scenes, like managing the finances, paying the cleaners, paying the on-site maintenance individuals, etc. Mine is very guest facing, and it's more of the guest facing side that is going to determine what we're capable of managing than anything else. Because it's even like right now, I'll get messages from guests and they'll be like, oh, I was wondering about an early check-in. And it's like, if they text me and I don't even know the phone number, I'm like, okay, wait, what property are you coming to? So then the more that you have that, the more it's like you have these different questions with these different states. It just, the logistics there, especially as we're traveling and trying to be present in our own lives too, there's balance there. I think our coaching side, we're capping our workshops, our monthly workshops at 5 individuals.
Okay.
And
tell me about those.
Yeah.
What do those look like?
We kind of offer different things. We have the basic online courses. If you're just wanting a self-paced, like I want to go through 4 modules, we have 2 online courses. One of them is to teach people how to invest in Airbnb. So analyzing like a market to go into, picking the right property for that market, how to find financial options, as you were talking about, like, where does this money exist? To be able
money,
because it takes capital, and that's oftentimes like what people don't have. And so we have a whole module on like all of your financial options if you're wanting to get into that space. So that's one course. And then the second course that we have, which is 3 modules, is how to stage your Airbnb to attract guests and to have the most profit you can have coming in. Those are just like our online, like, I'm going to hand you this, you go do your thing. But what we started doing, because I wanted face-to-face time and connection time with some of these people that are starting to follow us, I started offering workshops. So it's for the same 2 groups of people. Those who have never invested in Airbnbs, we have a workshop. And then our second workshop is for people who already have one and they want to improve it, or they want to stage it for the first time, or that sort of thing. And so our in-person workshops are 8 one-hour sessions live. And then we also give a one-on-one where we'll go through specifically what our clients need. So if they're investing for the first time, it's sitting down, okay, let's look at all of your market analysis. Like, are you missing something? How do you feel post that analysis? What kind of properties should you be looking for? That sort of thing. And then within the hour-long sessions, it's a lot of like back and forth interaction. So I'll kind of cover a concept, and then there'll be a Q&A. So that I'm addressing their questions as they're coming up. And it's been a really successful model for us, actually. I've really liked it. I've heard so many times, like, this is exactly what I needed. Like, now I'm feeling so much more confident. And that's exactly what we're wanting them to feel when they walk out of this, is like, I can do this myself. I don't have to turn my house over to a designer. I don't have to turn it over to a property management company. That you have within you the ability to figure out how to do this. And you can do this on top of W-2 income. We manage 6 properties in addition to W-2 jobs for 10 years. My husband and I did. And it is 100% doable. You just have to have, as you mentioned, it's all about the systems. It's all about having like the things set up that allow you to have a system to go to analyze a property, having a system to go to analyze what I should be putting in this to attract the right guest in this area, that sort of thing. And once you have that in place, it's plug and play.
Yeah.
But until you have that, it's shaky ground. And I would say 80% of the people who are engaging with me actively as an Airbnb coach, they're women. They're looking for passive income sources for their family, and they know that they're going to be managing the guest side. So that's typically who ends up connecting.
And isn't that a beautiful piece of having your own business, creating this freedom-filled business? You can run it however best fits your life.
Yeah.
Right. And this, which is why I went into coaching myself, like with the coaching program for photographers, the same thing. It's twice a month. It's on Mondays. When that phases out, I will never coach on another Monday in my entire life. So my new coaching program is Wednesdays because I want to be able to have my Mondays and Fridays, right? So I love that. I love that you're able to make it fit your life. What other ways do you think has life improved? We'll maybe wrap up with this.
Because I was going to ask you the same question, actually. Like, do you, how you feel about the coaching space and like your impact on motherhood and some of the benefits there? So yeah, I guess I'll go first with that one, but it's been one of the things that has been so beautiful is like my daughter's daycare does a lot of like, it's family day, so come in, or like, you know, for Mother's Day, they had the moms come in and they did this special little picnic thing, or they'll have a volunteer day on a field trip or whatever. I never would have been able to do those things as a teacher. It's so funny when you have a career that's dedicated to other people's kids.
Yeah.
You can actually be very dedicated to your own.
Yes.
And although you have 3 months off, which I think is the big thing when people observe teachers is like, that's the most amazing job ever because you have 3 months off. Yes, that's a beautiful thing to have 3 months off in the summer. But at the same time, it's a very set 3 months. For the other 9 months out of the year, especially if you have kids in school that are participating in different things, you're missing out on all that. I have to take unpaid time as a teacher. I then have to go get a sub to cover my classes.
Mm-mm.
Then I have to do sub notes to go out to go do that hour-long thing at my daughter's school, right? So there were challenges there for me. Those were kind of some of those moments where I recognized, like, I love my teaching career, but as a mom, I'm going to miss out on things because I just can't make it work within what the school day hours are. And it was getting my daughter up early. I mean, I was pulling her out of the house to head to daycare at 6:30 in the morning to get to school on time. And so it's things like that I've noticed. I was able to allow her to sleep in from the holiday weekend this morning because she's still like tired from the jet lag and whatever. We were out visiting my family in Washington. I'm able to do that because I can just work on my computer while she's still sleeping. And as soon as she's up, great. I pop her over to daycare and I come back and I do what I need to do. That's really been the most impactful, I think, for me as a mom is just having that control over my schedule. I still need to work. I still need to be focused and find that time to get in somewhere in my day. But I have the ability to say that hour-long meeting doesn't work for me right here because I have to whatever, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So that's been the most impactful to me. How about you?
Oh, same sort of thing. And you know, it's not like this perfect balance, right? Oh, I do 50% business and 50% mother. You know, it's juggling plates, spinning plates, you know, all the things. I love the ability to just be like, I'm not working on this Tuesday. It's my kid's birthday. I'm not working all day long. Or I'm going to take this half of the day and we're going to play. That to me is the reason that I started my business. But I wanted to be able to take them to school. I wanted to be able to be at the sports practices and be at the bus stop when they got off and all those things. And I think you said pretty much the same thing is, you know, you have to set boundaries around when I say I'm going to work and when I say I'm not going to work. And that's hard, especially when you work from home, because it's easy to sneak back into the computer or do something on your phone real fast. And I know with managing guests, I mean, you can't always do that, but just being as present as you can where you are. So like if I'm coaching, I want to be all in with my clients. And if it's mom time, I need to put my phone down and be all in right there. And my kids are older now. I have 5 boys, 3 of my own and 2. We're a blended family now. So 2 bonus boys and they're older. And so I learned these things as my kids were younger and it's not perfect by any means. It never will be. But I try to compartmentalize, you know, and not let those 2 parts of my life overlap the best I can. So I love the ability to just walk away when I need to walk away, or just block time on my calendar. I think there's nothing more beautiful than a big block of a busy time on my busy, and that's in quotes, that nobody can get to me. Nobody can get to me during this time. And my whole calendar looks like a rainbow with all the colored time blocks. Like, I'm the time management queen. I love my time blocks, but I give them a purpose, right? So if you don't tell your time where to go, it's gone before you even realize it. Just like your money, like, you have to be purposeful with it. And so I've kind of learned that skill, along with adding some white space to your calendar. So we're not meant to be superwoman, not all the time. I think that I am a lot of the time, but then I prove myself wrong. But just being able to be present with the kids and with our spouses, I think, is just the best thing about having businesses like these. What a cool conversation we have had, what we have turned this into.
I know, it's so amazing. And to talk with someone else who gets it. Like, you don't have to explain every aspect, because there's just a certain amount that when you're listening, you're like, yep.
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah. I love this. Well, this was so fun. Thank you, Julie, so much.
Yes. Thank you. It was a great conversation.
Thanks for wandering with me today. If you were inspired by this episode and think it would ignite a spark in a friend, don't hesitate to share. And if you're craving more from the Wander Mode community, hop on over to Instagram at WanderModeCo. Meet you in the next episode, and until then, wander on.